people would say they can't tell the difference between the dummy and the real crier. This gentleman is wearing the uniform of the crier. So if we were here in the 19th century, this would be Richard Woolgar, the town crier of Seaford, and I would be William Woolgar, his brother, who was the sergeant at Mace.
Where did you get this lovely coat from?
Well, this coat is a copy of the uniform that was worn by the Seaford town crier for the Festival of Britain in 1951, and that was believed to be a copy of what the town crier would have worn before the 1860s, because there was a town crier before the 1860s, and there are no reliable photographs. Every photograph of the Seaford town crier wearing the old uniform is smudged. Betty, Des, here we are in the sitting room of one of the most photographed, one of the most beautiful, one of the most iconic areas of this country, in a coastguard cottage overlooking the Cuckmere River. I mean, what is it like to live here? What are the attractions of being in this beautiful spot?
Well, it's peaceful first off until the gales come, but most times we get sun, we get a lot of people visiting, have a good chatter to them. It's wonderful. It's a different life.
And the view from your garden is just the sea.
And the Seven Sisters.
And the Seven Sisters, how could we forget them? So when were these cottages first put up, and what was the purpose of them?
They were put up in about 1840, and they were put up as coastguard cottages. There was a lot of smuggling going on in those days, so they had the cottages built here. They had another coastguard cottage, I believe, at Crowlink and Burling Gap, and also along further at Seaford, and the coastguards used to keep a very tight watch on the beach to stop the smuggling.
The bigger house further down nearer the sea, that was for officers, wasn't it?
That is still called the officers' house. Yes. And here the men used to stay, and the one up at the top of here. Apparently if you were married you had a single room together, but the rest of the men all took the remaining rooms and enjoyed life.
On the 29th of November 1747, for Americana was being towed from Plymouth to London when she broke away and was wrecked under Crowlink cliffs, breaking her back. Hundreds of...
Did you find it out there?
Americana was found by everybody in Seaford, and they all helped themselves to the baccy and the brandy.
What time of year, how long ago was that?
Well, this was November 1747.
Oh,
but the locals got the jump on the riding officers, the customs officers, but they arrived eventually and managed to reclaim a lot of the booty for the owners.
Yeah.
So I think everybody would put that down as a satisfactory result. What were all these coastguards doing?
Well, they were put up to bring the coastguards in to keep an eye right along the coast to stop the smuggling that was coming into England, and also, I believe, out to France.
Year of our Lord, 1789, the Sussex Weekly Advertiser has been telling us that nearly every land, from France to Russia, has had a revolution, and some have even thrown out their kings. The Oxford militia, who were encamped at Blatchington, did mutiny, largely because their daily remuneration of 6p plus 4p food ration was not enough to pay for food, cooking utensils, fuel and the flour. As the 2 ringleaders were sentenced to death by firing, and 5 more to be hanged. As Cook and Parish were shot in front of 15 regiments by their own militia at Goldstone Bottom in Hove. It was a sorry event, and we felt, despite the damage and the larceny, that this was a sad end for our countrymen engaged in defending us against the foe. In 1805, the Sussex Weekly Advertiser told us, "For the better defence of our eastern coast against invasion, several Martello towers were shortly to be erected." Now, we already had batteries at Seaford and Blatchington, but they went ahead and built our tower, number 74, so called because it was the last of 103 built. And it was the most expensive. Some bricks came from Newhaven, but mostly they came from London, the yellow ones called Superior London Stocks. London always thinks itself superior. Anyway, they used 700,000 of them. Now that old nosy Wellington has beaten Boney at Waterloo, what are we going to use the tower for? A tea house? Target practice? Or perhaps a house of history to tell the tale of the French wars? The biggest bang took place last week when the Royal Engineers, commanded by the impressive General Burgoyne, exploded 11 tons of powder within the cliff beyond Splash Point to create a barrier to the sea's depredations at the base of the cliff. But the bang was also imperious enough to blast the chalk to powder. And the idea of preventing the force of the ocean attacking our famous cliff was defeated within the week.
The role of town crier goes back for centuries, and it was the job of the town crier to disseminate official information, official news that usually came down to Seaford from London. I'm sure often that was bad news. It was increases in taxes, and maybe it wasn't always good news. But the town crier also had other duties as well. For instance, as we've heard, he had to tell people, for instance, if the French were invasion. It was an early form of air raid warning to show that the French were due to invade.
We're on top of Tower 74, a Martello tower. When did that go up in relation to Napoleon, to Nelson and to the Battle of Trafalgar?
Well, the tower was built in 1808, which was after the Battle of Trafalgar. So the Napoleonic fleet had been destroyed off of Spain, but Napoleon still had a viable threat to invasion to this country. And of course, this was built prior to the Battle of Waterloo. So just across the sea, we were still worried that we'll be invaded by the French.
In his coat so blue, with his golden braid and his top hat too, and his ringing bell that will call to you in old Seaford town in the morning.
This is the new inn, but renamed the Wellington in honour of Old Nosy.
Peter White, the crowd exclaimed, being cried in our good Queen's reign, proclaiming his message again and again at the top of his voice in the morning. And the sound of his voice called me from their shopping, oyez, oyez, and everyone.
Be it known that the great storm has overcome the new sea wall and the shingle bank, and the inundation reaches throughout the town. Men with carts and ladders are required to report to the station approach for the bailiff and town sergeant to direct them to where the greatest succour is needed.
And the sparrows hopping on to hear Peter White in the morning.
The Great Flood of 1875 overcame all of Seaford's puny sea defences. The shingle bank, which had protected the town for centuries, was washed away. The Wellington pub was surrounded by water, Church Street, which we stand in now, was flooded from the wheelwright's corner right the way up to the parish church, and in fact the west door was the point that the seawater reached. Oyez! Oyez! Oyez!
Oh, Seaford and Sussex, my adopted town and county, absolutely fabulous. What a fantastic place to live.
We celebrate the beautiful county of Sussex, home to the South Saxons, men who will not be druv. So what's the family connection to these cottages?
My grandfather was one of the last coastguards here.
Roughly when was that?
1920,
Yes, 1920, something like
just
that.
after the end of the First World War.
So it was a real little community here, was it?
Yes, but there were different families. They all got together.
Well, your other granddad used to come down here from Surrey in a horse-driven caravan for a holiday, and then that's how the two families met. And after the Coast Guards finished in about 1920, the other granddad bought them. He had one son and 3 daughters, and hence the 2 lower cottages are divided so that they each shared one.
So it's a real family enterprise.
Yes,
taking over from
still
the Coast
2 of the
Guards.
cottages are still in the family.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a boathouse on the beach? Who did that belong to?
It belonged to the bottom cottage.
Oh, went with the building. And what happened to it? Did it disappear?
I
in
think
the
it
war, or
disappeared. It
storms?
was a little bit before our time, so
Right.
we see them in photographs.
Yeah.
And also there was a flagpole sticking in the back garden, which is long since gone.
Gone into the sea. So what is it like to be up here in a real humdinger of a storm?
You sleep like a log until something runs loose, and then you're awake in a flash, because you've got to get out and find out what's gone loose.
What's flapping about?
Right. So how do the waves actually come up to the garden on extreme storms?
Not here, but the lower cottage, it will hit the seawall and spray over the roof.
Onto the
It can be very, very rough.
So do you have to do sort of more maintenance on a house than you would on a house in the town?
More than you realise.
Yes.
And we like to keep it looking nice because we get a lot of visitors coming down, and it's an iconic view known all over the world.
I was understood that there was some sort of cable under the sea starting here. What was all that about?
Yes, indeed. Just by the beach, the cable house. It took the telephones lines from London right under the sea, right across to France.
Oh, amazing. Do we know when that was done, roughly?
Well, in the early part of the 20th century, I would think. And would you have had a town crier at the time these cottages were built?
Well, yes, because if these went up in the 1830s, 1840s, there would certainly have been a town crier. Really, the only way of spreading the news in the town.
Well, the Coast Guards down here had a naval uniform. They always wore naval uniforms, and if you see the old photographs, there they are in their uniforms, very proudly wearing them.
And it was very much like a military organisation, wasn't it?
Oh yes,
Coast Guard,
very
yes.
much. Here's an old photograph of Cookmere. I don't know who these chaps are because they're
Coast Guards.
well, I don't
Well, they're
know.
not
I
in
should think
uniform,
they're
are
the
they?
locals, but
Yeah.
the dinghy's a little bit bigger than we use now. But you'll see the officer's house down here.
What do you think is the future for these cottages?
Well, the main risk to the cottages is, of course, the sea, as has happened over many years. In recent years, we've been lucky enough to erect seawalls and maintain them, but it's a continuing battle, especially if the climate change does increase the sea level, and I think in time they must go. Unfortunately, it'll be a great loss to the area.
So you've known these cottages as a family for well over 60 years. Can you sum up one particular high spot that you can remember from all your time in association with this wonderful location?
Well, there's a lot of high spots, but I think the greatest must be Betty and I got engaged here.
I think belatedly, congratulations.
Yes, 57 years too late. So.
Okay, well, this is the National Championships, the 63rd time of competing, and this is one of the competitors who's come probably the furthest.
One of the furthest, yeah.
This is Devlin. Tell us where you come from.
I come from Middlewich in Cheshire.
Of confidence and clarity.
Well, I've come all the way from Dorchester, but I know that the competition in Hastings is wonderful.
My year of history is 1955.
You could say there's no relevance, but it's fun, isn't it? And as we're crying about today, it's all about history and heritage and
yes.
so on.
Keeping the craft alive.
Keeping the craft alive, you know, exactly. But there's some good cries here, and I mean, I've got no idea who's going to win.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! These quirky buildings are the Fitzgerald almshouses. They're built with Sussex flints, and they've got some nice wiggly Elizabethan chimneys. They were built by the Fitzgeralds, who were an Irish landowning family that go back centuries. The most famous member of the family was the man who translated the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. But the person who put up the money for both the first Seaford National School in Stane Road and this building was John Purcell Fitzgerald, who took over the old Milburg Hall, the big mansion facing the sea in Seaford, and turned it into the Corsica Hall that we know there today. If you look over the top of the tower arch, you can just make out the rather weather-worn coat of arms of the Fitzgerald family, with the monkey, which is always on their coat of arms, and the very strange wording, Crom Abu.
Fame is spreading far and wide in a German town, his trade he plied. You're a stout house roofer, now they cry.
This is the Tide Mills level crossing. The railway line running past us goes between Newhaven and Seaford and had its 150th anniversary in 2014 with steam trains and lots of celebrations. Behind me are the ruins of Tide Mills Station, which served the people of Tide Mills and Bishopstone up until the 1930s. Tide Mills itself was a village, almost a feudal village with a wall around it, owned by the Cat family, and in it they had set up, or their predecessors had set up, one of the largest tidal mills in Europe. 16 pairs of millstones grinding 18 to 20 hours a day as the sea flowed in and the sea flowed out of their artificial lake, which was part of the old riverbed, River Ouse. And also they had a windmill on top, not for decoration, but for hauling the bags of grain up to the top of the mill, so everything else worked by gravity. Well, a lot of the walls in Tide Mills are built of flints. The flintstones are more historical than you thought they were. Flints are found everywhere in Sussex where there is chalk. So Downland, Sussex, uses flint as one of its major building materials. There's really three types of flint. The cheapest ones were the ones that were turned up in fields by the plough. They were rough old things, and you just had to accept the shape they were. If you wanted nice, smooth, rounded, comfortable looking flints, then you got them from the beach, because the action of the sea had smoothed them off nicely. But if you were a gentleman and you wanted a nice flint and mathematical tile house that you'd find in Seaford or Lewes, then you would have napped flints, where some poor craftsman had spent many hours working with a chisel, constantly resharpening, to smooth off the faces of the flints and give them an almost box-like appearance. Well, here we are on the banks of the Mill Creek at Tide Mills. And Tide Mills has a bittersweet history, because not only was it a very innovative mill and a very interesting place to live, but it also had a big military history. And during the Napoleonic Wars, a lot of troops were stationed in the camps at Seaford, and they were very badly paid. They had 10 pence a day, which may sound pretty good, but you had to buy your own cooking equipment, repair your own uniform, do lots of other things with that money, and you had to pay for flour to put on your pigtail, because a pigtail was an essential part of your uniform. And of course, the main function of the town crier in the 1930s was to tell the lovely people of Seaford, drop whatever you're doing and rush to the bay, because the mackerel are in. No fishing boats, just tubs and baskets and boxes and buckets and anything else they could lay their hands on to scoop the silvery fish out of the sea, take them home and smoke them. The town crier brings news, usually good, occasionally sad, sometimes profound. But a town crier brings basically joy to people around. What is the future for town criers? I think the town crier, which has been with us since at least 2250 BC, there is proof of that, is something which will last until the end of the age. Let nation speak peace unto nation.